Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Kevin Pasternak, the National Sales Manager for Prophesy Transportation Solutions. And today we will be reviewing and taking a closer look at the dispatch board within your Prophesy dispatch software. Just a couple of housekeeping items. I will be muting everybody during the presentation today. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So I would encourage you to please go ahead and take as many notes or questions that you might have, and then we can answer those questions at the end of the presentation. We are recording today's session, so we will be sending out a recorded version of the presentation, so you can go back and reference it anytime you'd like to. And also, please keep in mind that these are monthly webinars that we're providing for our customers. We're always looking for ideas on what you'd like to see in these presentations. So if there is anything specific that you would like to see in the future, please don't hesitate to send us an email on that. Let's go ahead and get started. What are we going to be reviewing today? Well, we're going to go through how to customize views on the dispatch board based on user-defined preferences. I'm going to go through some of the wizards that are available on the dispatch board. We're going to talk about alerts and how to set up alerts. We're also going to go through and talk about not only the basic alerts, but dispatcher alerts as well. A lot of what we talk about is going to be both drilling in from the dispatch board and right-click functionality that's on the dispatch board. And some of you may be using some of the right-click functionality. Some of you may not know that it even exists. And so all of these items that you see on your screen right here are items that can be done from a right-click option from one or more views within the dispatch board. And we're going to go through the different views, take a look at some of those features and functions, and how you can use them in your operation today. Once again, we will have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation today. So if there's any questions you have as I go through, if you could please make a note of it, and we'll come back and review it at the end. Let's go ahead and get right into the presentation. Excuse me. Let's go right here. So we're in the Prophesy dispatch system, and the first thing we want to do is when some of you log in now, you may be opening up the system, and it may be just opening up to the dispatch board looking like mine does right here. What you want to do is go to the board. You want to collapse all the views if they're not collapsed, and then go to the options. These are not your general preferences for your system, but these are specific preferences or options that are specifically related right to the dispatch board itself. And we're going to go through these 5 tabs and go through and explain those settings, and we'll adjust some of them as we go along. You will notice that today I am logged in as user Kevin, so I am only going to impact or change the settings for user Kevin. If I was logged in as a supervisor or with the DBA login, then I could go ahead and I could adjust dispatch board settings for all of the users or as many users as I wanted to select. So if you want to change just settings for yourself, you can log in as yourself as long as you have permission to do that. If you want to adjust settings for multiple users, use the DBA login, and you can do that. The first thing I want to talk about here is when the dispatch board opens, what view do you want it to open to? When you come into your system and you log in the morning, is there a specific view that you go to? Or anytime during the day, is there one view that you work in more than another? Many people will work in the active loads view. Other people will go to the pending load. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change it, so I'm just going to open up on pending load. So I've done that. Some of you currently may be using the dispatch board in a split view mode. Well, if you want it to open on a split view, you can click there and then select a view that it will open up split. One view on the top, one view on the bottom. As you know, there is the tree on the left side. If you want to hide the tree, you can check that off or uncheck it. Date ranges. You can set up a default range, a date range right here that will apply to all of the views in the dispatch board by selecting either a custom or just what date range you want, and then just resetting so it applies to all of the views. For the active loads view, you want to come in here and you want to set up what statuses you want included in the active loads view. For those of you that attended our webinar in January, you know that we recently added a new status called Preassigned. So one thing you might want to do when you get that update, or if you've received that update already and installed it, you might want to come in and check off so Preassigned is included in your active loads view as well. The colors on the dispatch board, as you know, the different statuses have different colors, different views have different colors. These colors are universal for all users. These are not user specific. These are the default colors. If you want to change a color, one good reason is somebody's colorblind, can't see reds or blues or greens, things like that. You can come in, you can just double click on the load view that you want to change the color on, select the color you want to change it to, click OK, and it will apply that color for all users in the system. Alerts. Some of you may be using alerts today. There are alerts that you can set up for pending loads, for assigned loads, for en route loads. You would check these off so that they're activated, and then you would tell the system how many hours in advance you'd want to be alerted to that alert, or for that alert to trigger. So for instance, if I have a pending load alert activated, as I do here, and I set it to 1 hour, an hour comes up before a load is supposed to be picked up. If that load has not been moved to an assigned status, either a driver being assigned to it or a motor carrier being assigned to that load, well, an alert would be created. Same would be true if it was assigned and it hadn't been picked up. If it was en route and it hadn't been delivered when it was supposed to be delivered, an alert would pop up. Just going to go ahead and turn those off. ETA alerts. If you have ETA alerts turned on, anytime you enter a check call, we go ahead and calculate the ETA for that load, and we compare that ETA to the scheduled delivery time for that load. If the ETA becomes later than the scheduled delivery, you have ETA alerts turned on, that load is going to turn a different color, whichever color you have your ETA alert set to. Most of them, you can see, defaults are set to a shade of gray, of red. Appointment level alerts are really tied to detention alerts. So if you have appointment or detention alerts turned on in your general preferences, then they'll be activated here as well. And the system would start alerting you. You have 3 different levels of appointment levels or detention alerts, and you have a first level, a second level, a third level. So you may want to give your customer warnings that, hey, that truck is getting close to where you're going to start charging them for detention. In the advanced options, we have an auto refresh functionality here. For those of you that have multiple users in your system, if you're in a view for a specific period of time and somebody else may have changed something in that view, well, you won't be seeing that unless you manually hit the refresh button. So you may want to come in and set this maybe to refresh automatically every 5 minutes. I don't think I'd set it to lower than 5 minutes because then it just starts refreshing and refreshing. Also, you know that whenever you go to a different view and come back, the board is going to automatically refresh for you today. So once again, this would be for people that have a large number of users in the system. Other people are managing loads, assigning loads, etc. And if it's on auto refresh, somebody else makes a change in the system, that change will be reflected in your system automatically when it auto refreshes. Load responsibility filters. If you have a specific user that has specific responsibilities, maybe they're responsible just for covering loads for certain customers, well, you can assign those customers to that dispatcher. You would come here and define the filter, select the customers that you want to associate with that user, that dispatcher. So when that dispatcher logs in, they're only going to see loads that are associated with customers that are associated with them. Or it might not be customers, it might be drivers, or it may be one of these other criteria. Or it could be multiple criteria as well that you can set up there. For people that post loads internally in the system, you can set up a default time for how long you want that equipment to be available. And we'll talk about that a little more in a few minutes. Resetting the views. If you want to reset a view back to the way it came when you received it from us, or one or more views, I should say, you can simply come in here. You can select the view, like we'll just come to our pending loads view. And I'm going to go ahead and reset this in my system. Sometimes when you get an update from us, you'll notice that a view has been reset. And the reason we do that is sometimes there's an enhancement that's been done to the system, and when the software gets updated and installed, we have to go ahead and reset that view. So we're just going to click apply here and let that be like that. And we're going to come over here to the dispatch board now. And we'll just go ahead and close it. Now I'm going to go ahead, and you'll notice I click on the board, it reopens, and you can see this time it opened up right to my pending loads because that's how we had it configured. So the first thing I just want to talk about here is across the top, what you're seeing. On the left side here we have a calendar, and that's where you can click and come in, and in each view on the dispatch board, you can come in and adjust a filter for dates. So if I only want to see today's loads, or today and tomorrow, or the next 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, I can just select one of those, and that's what I'll see every time I log in on this particular view. Or I could come down and use a custom date range, and you can see my date range is from October 23rd through March 27th, and you can see that date range right up there in the header. The nice thing about using a custom date range is, especially on pending loads, is I have it set to a time in the past, so I haven't missed any loads. I didn't forget to pick anything up or cover something, but it will roll automatically. So when I come in tomorrow, it's going to be 1024 to 328. Once again, you can set these up in every view and make them different, or you could assign the same date range to all the views. In the header, as I said, you're also seeing that date range. Over on the left side, we're seeing the number of loads that are being displayed in the view. Over to the right, we see the refresh button. So if I manually click on that, it's going to go ahead and refresh the data in the view. Here's a printer if I want to print the view. And the next button is an export to Excel. If you don't have the export to Excel, to turn that on, you would go to your general preferences, go to your system defaults, print to Excel defaults, and go ahead and turn that on right here. And that will allow you to take any view on the dispatch board and print it out to Excel. So let's go ahead and customize this view. I see a lot of customer systems, and they haven't gone in and customized the views. And in every view on the board, when you get your system initially, we're giving you basically all the data that we almost could potentially display in that view. And based on your business, well, you might not need to see all that data. So what you'll want to do is come in, highlight any one of the loads, right-click, and just come down to Customize View. And on the right-hand side, these are all of the fields that are presently being displayed in the view. And all I have to do here is either double-click on something or just click and drag it. So I can just click on Scheduled Delivery and drag it over, get rid of shipments, or just start double-clicking. I'm going to put revenue back over. Let's just drop revenue in right there. And I'm just going to scroll down here, and we're going to start just getting rid of all of these additional fields that I do not want in my pending loads view. Once again, you can set this up so everybody's views are the same, or each user, based on your permission levels, can simply come in and change this yourself. You'll notice that all of these fields are coming from the booking screen. We'll leave weight. We'll get rid of tonnage. Let's get rid of weight. Let's get rid of pieces, pallets, goods. You'll also notice here that along the goods line, those user-definable fields that some of you may be using, you can also display those in the pending loads view. As you go through the different views on the board, you will notice that some of the fields are available and some not in the others, just depending on your specific, on the view that you're in. So we can see now that it's limited now to the data that I selected. I'm just going to go ahead and, just like I would in Excel, I'm going to go ahead and just space these out. Once I do this, the board will be set up. And this is something you might, just adjust, once, or maybe when you just get your system, you'll adjust it. You might adjust it one more time and just leave it like that and never touch it again. So there we go, and you'll notice as I refresh this, that view is going to stay just like that. So a couple of other pointers here now that we've got the data that we want to see in this view. You can sort these, and you can sort them based on any header, just like you can Excel. So if I wanted to sort by customer, I could just double-click on customer, and it will sort ascending or descending by customer. Or if I wanted to sort on scheduled pickup date, which probably makes more sense, you can see now my earliest load to my latest load. One other thing, like I'm showing the weight here, and you'll notice as I go across the weight, there's that little bubble that kind of pops up. And if I click on that, that's going to give me some additional information. So I can see the weight on this load is the 45,000 pounds, but I can also see the goods or commodities that are on here. And if there were multiple commodities, I could see those. I can see there's 3,500 pieces, 24 skids, 22.5 tons. So various fields on the board have that ability to do that. You can see in the time I have that as well. So you may want to spend some time just rolling across some of those fields and seeing data that potentially will pop up for you. In every view on the board, if you have a lot of data in a view, maybe you're working in a completed loads view and you've got all kinds of data, you can also split the view up a little bit by coming over here on the bottom and moving this bar over. And just like you can in Excel, now I've broken it up into two views. So I may want to look at some data that's all the way over here to the right, but I want to match it up with something that's on the left. So you've got that flexibility. Once you leave the view and come back, you are gonna lose that bar. So if I come back here to pending loads, you'll notice it's gone. So I would have to then reset that bar. A couple of shortcuts that you might not be aware of. If I highlight a load and simply click on F10, that will bring me right to the load itself. Of course, you all know that you can also double-click on that load. If I hit F11, that will bring me right to an assignment screen, a shortcut in there. And we won't save that. And the posted equipment. Internally in the system, if any of you are posting equipment, that would be more of, say, a carrier called you and said they were going to have some equipment available. Do you have any loads? Well, you might not at the time, but you want to enter in the system. So you could highlight the load, right-click, come down to searches, and you want to go ahead and search for posted equipment. I'm looking for equipment that's near Bloomfield, Connecticut. I'm saying within 100 miles. I don't care about the destination. If I want to look at specific equipment types, I could do that. And I'll just hit search, and I can see there's one truck. One company's called me, Autumn Transport, Joe Thomas. There's his phone number, who says he has a truck available right in Bloomfield, Connecticut. So I could go ahead and call Joe and see if that truck was still available. The other views on the board, as we just move down here, assign loads. These are loads that have drivers, tractors, carriers, motor carriers assigned to them. One thing you're noticing here is, once again, there is a new status that was recently added. That is the preassigned status. And you see that the loads in the salmon color are just assigned. The one in this brighter pinkish color is actually preassigned. You can see it says yes right there to preassigned. Why would you use the preassigned status? Well, there's three main reasons why that was designed and why it was put in the system at customer request. The first was for people that spend a lot of time doing planning, and they don't lock something down, but they're planning to do something. So they might be using a load scheduler, and they want to just pre-assign, and then once they lock it in, then they'll consider it assigned. The second would be if you're using mobile comm integration. A number of you on the phone today are integrated to either our SkyTrack product, OmniTrax, Rand McNally, PeopleNet, Teletrack, And you know that there's two ways for that data to go out. It can either be pushed out manually through the system, or you can set it up so that it releases on a timer. Well, if a driver is a mobile comm driver and you pre-assign it, if you have it set up where the system is automatically releasing that load information in a pre-assigned status, it will not put it into the mobile comm queue. So if it's pre-assigned, it's not in the mobile comm queue. Once it's assigned, it would go into that queue. So that would be another reason, especially if you're planning and you have mobile comm drivers, you don't want loads being sent out automatically. The third would be in a brokerage situation where you've made a deal with a carrier to move a load. You've sent them over the carrier confirmation, or maybe it's a new carrier and you've sent them over your entire packet. You haven't heard back from them yet. You haven't received the signed paperwork back, so the load isn't good to go. So you would leave it in a pre-assigned state until you receive that paperwork back, and then you would change it to an assigned status. And to change it, the status is the same as changing any status. You could either right-click and change status, and it goes to the next status they're assigned, or, of course, you can just click up there on the toolbar, and you notice the next status is assigned. And when you assign a driver or carrier or tractor trailer to a load, the system will give you an option to pre-assign it today rather than just assigning it. The en route loads view, we can see here if those of you that are getting check calls, a shortcut for entering a check call in here would be if you just highlight the load instead of right-clicking and go to F12 or clicking on the check call icon up top, you can just highlight it, hit F12, and it brings you right to the check call screen, and you can enter your check call. A wizard that you might not be familiar with from this view would be, let's say I have a load going to Atlanta. I want to find some load opportunities out of Atlanta, either from available loads I have in the system or from people I've hauled for before out of the Atlanta area. I'm going to right-click. I'm going to come down to search, and I'm going to say search for a backhaul. And notice it automatically is looking for a load coming out of Atlanta. The last time I ran this, I said look within a 125-mile radius of Atlanta. If I'm trying to get a driver back to a specific destination or zone, I could fill that in. If I'm looking for specific types of loads that require certain equipment, I can use that filter as well. I can go back in time as far as I want. I'm just going to go ahead and search, and you can see the results that came up. You know by now that the yellow loads in my system are pending loads, so I have 3 pending loads that I could match this driver up to. One of them is tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning right in Atlanta. Another one is tonight at 10 o'clock, 11 miles away in Tucker, Georgia. And the third would be tomorrow at 11 o'clock in the morning, 43 miles in Covington, Georgia, going to Cleveland, Ohio. These other loads are historical loads that I've done. Once again, I can go back as far as I want. Here's a load I did. It's pretty far away. It was 100 miles away out of Chattanooga, Tennessee. Went to Houston, Texas. I got the load from Multimode Logistics. They paid me $2.19 a mile. John Adams is the contact. There's the phone number. So why not pick up the phone and call John and see if they have anything available. Once again, as we right-click in here, you can see all of the items. If I want to give an advance to a driver, I can do it from right here. If for some reason I want to go right to the customer master file, I can do it from right here. If I want to map this load, I can do it right here. Let's say, and you would need this option. This is a mapping option. Customers that have mobile comm, you have this option. If you don't have mobile comm and you're interested in the mapping option, you can go ahead and add it to your system. You'll notice when the load comes up, it's on the map. The blue line that you're seeing is the route that we think, based on our mileage and routing system, the most practical route. If this was a mobile comm driver, this would not be a straight fuchsia line here. It would actually show the trail that the driver took. Because I don't have mobile comm activated, you're seeing a straight line. Here's the origin for the load. This is the last known location of the driver, the date and time. This was based on a manual check call that was put in the system. And here's where that driver is going. And of course, you can zoom right in here. Another use for these maps are you can go ahead and map all your trailers view. You can go in the trailer view, map all your trailers, or go in the tractor view, map all your tractors. Take a quick look here at other right-click options on here. Printing load sheets, bills of lading, document imaging we'll talk about in one second. Go down to completed loads. And let's say you want to find a load. I'm sure a lot of you use this search function off the toolbar, which is very handy. But if you're in a view on the dispatch board, you could just hit Control F and type in a load number. So maybe I was looking for 8629, and I knew it was within the date range that was selected, and I wanted to go in and see the documents that were associated with load 8629. Well, all I did is Control F, 8629, right-click, Document Imaging. Boom, here's all the documents that have been scanned in with that load. Maybe the customer's on the phone, they want the bill of lading, select the bill of lading, click email, automatically fills in their email address. It's coming from me. I'm going to hit send, and it's going to go ahead and send that email right to the customer with that bill of lading attached to it. Let's just quickly go through a few of these other views on the board. Once again, with resources. So if I wanted to come in and I wanted to see, or my equipment, let's go into equipment and let's go into trailers. Here I can see all my trailers. I can sort these by days. I can see how long each trailer has been at a specific location. If I wanted to, I could right-click and I could display all my trailers on these maps if I have the mapping option, or I could display just this trailer. So that would be a nice feature for many of you to use if you're not using that today. Splitting the board. If you want to come in the board and if you want to split the view, you can do that. I've got my pending loads on top. Let's say I just show my driver or resource availability view on the bottom. This is a view that's been in the system for quite a long time. You can set this up so it shows on the left side, shows like the current load or last load the driver did, and then as you split it down the middle here, it's showing the next load the driver's assigned to, or if they're not assigned to a load, that they need a load. If you wanted to assign, let's say driver Andrews to a load, I could either right-click and say assign to a load and type in the load number, or I could simply click on Andrews, drag Andrews up, drop him on a load, and click OK, and he would be assigned. You're also seeing here the pre-assign function. So if I click pre-assign, it would pre-assign Andrews to that load. I'm not going to assign him. And besides a split, you can also tile the board. So if I've got the board open and I want to add my load scheduler, and then I'm going to come over here to Window, and I'm going to say, let's tile it horizontally. Well, now I've got the load scheduler, which I'm sure many of you are using today, and I can see my pending loads over here. But the reason why people asked us to be able to integrate both the dispatch board and the load scheduler together was because sometimes there's more information that you need about a pending load than we can show you over here in the tree. Maybe there's special equipment requirements or something else that you would see in this view of pending loads. So from right here, I can click on a load, and if I wanted to assign it to a driver, just drag it up, drop it on that driver, once again click OK, and that load would be assigned, or that load would be assigned to that driver. So you've got that functionality that you can do within the dispatch board as well. I want to spend the next few minutes talking about queries on the dispatch board. And I get a lot of calls, or we get a lot of calls from customers that may be looking for a custom report, or they're asking about lane analysis. How can I see how many loads I've done between locations, or how much weight I've moved between locations for a customer, or how much revenue I've generated in a specific lane? They're looking for a report to do that. Well, there may not be a specific report in the system to do that, but if you spend time looking at the queries in the system, I think you'll be able to get a lot of the information that you're looking for. So let's spend the next 5 minutes or so just going through the queries. You may want to make a note that this function is in your dispatch manual on page 230 is where queries are explained, and it's a very clear section. If you have questions on it, you can certainly check with us. But to set a query here is we're just going to say set query. And you can run queries and save them. We're not going to show a save query right now, but we're going to go ahead and just run a very basic query at first. So we're going to look for any customer in the system that begins with AL. and we're going to say AL, and we're just going to say starts with, and then we're going to say, we're going to click on run the query. And you can see there's 888 loads came back between the date range that we've selected, 1/3/2010, 1/4/2015, that have AL beginning in the customer. And if I just sort this by customer, you can see Albany here, and let's just sort the other one, you can see Allen Materials. And if we scroll through, we'd see all the customers that makes up. Let's go ahead and now clear that query. Once again, we're not going to save it, and we're going to click on refresh. So that's a very simple query. You can also, up here on the top where you saw set a query, run a query, clear the query, we can do starts with or we can do within. So, if you remember a part of the name of a customer, but you can't remember the whole thing, as long as you can type part of it or any field in here, not just a customer, you can use that within to search. So let's do a little bit more complex query here. Let's click once again, set the query. We're not going to run a custom one. We're going to say the number of stops on the load is equal to 0. And we're going to look for loads that went from Bloomfield, Connecticut to Chicago. So we'll come over here to Origin City, and we'll type Bloomfield, Connecticut. And we'll come over to Destination City, and we'll make it Chicago, Illinois. So we're looking for loads that had no stops, originated in Bloomfield, Connecticut, went to Chicago, Illinois. And we'll go ahead and run it. And we can see there's 20 records that came back that matched that query once again, within that date range of from the 3rd of 2010 to 15. Let's clear that query. We're not going to save that one either. And we'll just go ahead and refresh the board. Now we've got the completed loads with the date range here, but let's say we want to adjust the date range in our query. So we'll go ahead and we'll set the query. Once again, we're not going to run a saved one. And let's just look at an actual pickup date that is greater than 01/01/13. And let's look for loads that started in New York. And let's say we only want to look for loads that were greater than 500 billing miles. So they picked up after 1/1/13. They went from New York, and they're greater than 500 miles. And we'll run that query. And we can see there were 111 loads that matched that criteria. So as you can see, as you can add multiple fields here, you can add date ranges. You can make queries as complex as you'd like. You can do AND queries, or you can do OR queries as well. Once again, page 230 in your manual is a good place to start to looking at queries. Let's go ahead and clear this. And once again, I'm not going to save that, but I do want to show you what a saved query looks like. So let's once again click on Set a Query, and this time we're going to say, yes, I want to run a saved query. So when I run a query, after I ran those, it kept saying, do you want to save it? I said no. If I said yes, a box would have popped up, and I could have just entered a name and saved it. And when I saved the query, it would have given me an option to share the query with other users in the system or keep that query proprietary for myself. So if I want to come in here and I've already created a query, I want to just find loads that Dondero did, I'm just going to double click on it. And once again, within this date range, you can see there were 359 loads that were done by driver Dondero. So you can come in, you can save the queries, you can get extremely complex, mine all kinds of data. And of course, once you run the query, you can then go and export that query out to Excel so that you can manipulate that data in any way you want to. And we'll just go ahead and clear that. I'm going to go back over here to our PowerPoint. So what we've reviewed is the dispatch board. Certainly, I think you can tell that it is the heart of your operation. From an operations standpoint, you can basically do whatever you need to do right from or off of the dispatch board. You can manage what you need to manage. If you spend the time to learn what you can do on and in or within the dispatch board, you can really become what we consider to be a power user of the Prophesy system. In closing, I certainly want to thank everybody for attending. I want to let you know that if you are interested in advanced training on the system, we do have that available, either via the phone here in Connecticut, having a trainer come to your facility. For those of you on the phone that did attend our user group last year in September out in Chicago, I'm sure you got a lot out of that. That was the feedback we got. The user group this year, Visions 2014, has been scheduled for the third week of September. It's being held in Denver, Colorado. You will see more information on that in the coming weeks. But if you're interested, certainly give us a call and we can provide you with information now. If you do have any other questions for myself or you can contact me, you can contact your account manager, and we'd be more than happy to go over anything with you. We have recorded this session. You will receive the recording in the next few days, and I certainly want to thank all of you for your business and certainly for attending today's session.